Hello, my sober lovelies. Before we dive in, I'm really excited to announce my group coaching program for women is live, and you can join now. So excited for this because let's be real here. Quitting drinking isn't just about saying no to the glass of wine or booze. It's about what comes after. All the fear, the boredom, the late night anxiety, and the stories you've been telling yourself for years. And that's where my Rewired Sober group coaching program for women comes in. It's only $247. I'm being totally transparent on the price. It's for 3 months, and you'll learn how to shift your mindset, build habits that actually stick, and question the core beliefs that have been keeping you stuck, and find healthier ways to deal with that loneliness and that now what feeling. The best part is you don't have to do it alone. We'll have live group coaching sessions weekly, and there'll be a bunch of women walking through it with you. It's not another cookie cutter sobriety program for mommy vloggers. It's neuroscience meets real life, and it's designed for women to help you not just stay sober, but actually feel good living sober. You can join anytime, and I'd love to see you on the inside. So start today, get instant access. The link's in the show notes. Hey there, and welcome to You've Been Selected. I'm your host, Kate Vitella, and something tells me you didn't just stumble across this podcast by accident. Maybe, just maybe, you've been called here, like selected by the universe for something more. So let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of You've Been Selected. So this one's going to be a solo episode. You get to listen to me blather on for a very long time. But I'm going to be talking about something I think is really important. I'm going to talk about the stages of recovery, PAWS, or post-acute withdrawal, and the pink cloud. So let's get started. As we know, recovery is not a straight line, right? You hear everyone say healing isn't linear, but recovery is like a wild roller coaster because there's unexpected highs and lows that can be super frustrating, and then everything in between. But here's the deal. I feel like when you understand the process, it stops feeling like a losing battle, and you get a little bit more invested, a little bit more compassionate toward yourself, and the journey feels a lot more doable. You actually feel empowered to learn more, to discover more about yourself. So today we're going to dive into the stages of recovery and how prolonged brain rebalancing, that's kind of the way I describe PAWS, also known as Post-Acute Withdrawal Syndrome, how that all can impact you, and sort of the infamous pink cloud, and how this all fits into a picture. Again, I say that knowledge is really powerful. When I went through all this, I didn't really have someone to pull me aside and say, hey, Google PAWS, like a dog paw. Google that. And I know like recovery is such a multifaceted approach. It takes science and an investigation into spirituality and, of course, the community aspect of it. I feel like, in 12-step meetings, you work the steps and that's amazing, or you're in a group or a group session, group coaching, sharing circles, that's also amazing. But you really have to continue to educate yourself on what you're going through. So as a caveat here, I'm going to say I am not a doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm not diagnosing you or telling you how to recover, blah, 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 blah. This reminds me of a funny story. My husband and I were in a doctor's office. I was getting ready for a procedure, and a young woman walked in and gave me some medical advice about how to recover. And she goes, but I'm not a doctor or a nurse. Anyway, and when she left the room, my husband and I were like, what the fuck? Who was that then? Who are you then? Did you just bust into my room and give me some unsolicited medical advice? Anyway, so whenever I say I'm not a doctor, I have to follow it up with, or a nurse. I'm just a random person. But I am a nurse, so I know what I'm talking about. And I also studied addiction science. I've been through all this myself. And this episode can be helpful if you are in the early days of sobriety or the early years of sobriety, or you're just trying to understand and support someone who's on this journey themselves. So let me break this down. So I want to start with acute withdrawal. We all know this part sucks. This is the early days, and everyone knows what this entails. This is the beginning. That this is the stage that happens right after you quit drinking or using, and everyone expects this part to come. Your body is physically detoxing from the substance, and you can have the shaking and the sweating and the nausea and the insomnia. And this part can last anywhere from a few days to a couple of weeks. I'm not going to go into this too much because most of us know what this is. And depending on the substances we used and our experience with them, how long we used, it's an intense phase, but it's temporary and it's a little bit different for everyone. But really, in the acute detox phase, your body's just essentially hitting reset. It's like cleaning house. So during this phase, you're really so focused on like survival strategies, like the core survival strategies. Like, am I hydrated? Can I hold water down? Can I hold a little food down? I remember going through this and I had such bad withdrawal that my mom put me in a bathtub to like absorb water because I couldn't even drink any water. That's a whole nother story. And honestly, I should have gotten more medical support. So acute withdrawal is no joke, and getting it through it safely should always be a top priority. I was an ass and I was a nurse in a smaller community, and I felt like if I go into the emergency room, they're all going to know me. So stupid. I should not have detoxed alone at home. I was a heavy, heavy drinker. I had all the nasty symptoms of withdrawal, the shaking, the hallucinations, sweating, the vomiting, dehydration. I mean, I look back and I'm lucky I got through that safely. I probably should have gone in. So if you have significant withdrawals in between your drinking, you could be at risk for like an alcoholic seizure, delirium tremens, DTs. And that's where you would go into a detox facility where they can monitor you. They can monitor your vital signs, your blood pressure, heart rate, etc. And they give you medications like Ativan or Librium, various meds to get you through this process. They actually have withdrawal scales for both narcotics and opiates as well as alcohol. And they monitor those really frequently, and they check for symptoms, and then they dose you accordingly. So that's my little plug-in for going in to get help to get through the initial detox if you need it. If you can do it at home on your own, that's great, but please, please, please prioritize safety and your health. Like, it doesn't matter how cool you look if you die, right? So that's super important. I always tell clients, like, don't try to detox at home alone. If you're a heavy, heavy drinker and your in-betweens are real brutal, yeah, don't try to do this part alone. Now, that being said, you detox, let's say you do it at home, you quit drinking, and then you go into, after that initial phase where the alcohol has kind of left your system, you get a couple weeks in, it doesn't really end there, right? It doesn't end with the detox, because then you go into the post-acute withdrawal. So acute meaning happening right now. So PAWS, post-acute withdrawal. I call it prolonged brain rebalancing because that's really what it is. And this is a part that I don't feel like people talk about a lot. This can last anywhere from 6 months sober up to 2 years. And again, this is going to be different for everybody depending on your drinking history. I am in no way saying that it's very linear. You go from acute detox straight into post-acute withdrawal, and that's just how it goes. When I talk about these things, often clients will say, okay, I have this many days sober. What stage am I on? Well, it doesn't work like that. I'm just letting you know kind of the stages that the body goes through. So when we talk about post-acute withdrawal, I think it's so important because it tends to be one of the larger reasons people struggle with maintaining their recovery in the beginning. Why? Right? Because it sneaks up on you. Like just when you think you're past the worst of it, pause will hit. And this can look like mood swings, anxiety, irritability, trouble concentrating, feeling despair, a myriad of different symptoms. Like one day you feel amazing and motivated and energized and unstoppable. I'm doing this. Hashtag sober life is the best life. And the next day it's like, a cloud of fog rolled in. Darkness, darkness. And you can feel apathetic, like nothing's amusing, like meh, or even like, what the F? And you're wondering if you're ever going to feel normal again. So I want to talk about all of this because we all go through various levels of this. Okay, so here's what's happening. Your brain is healing from like a chemical shitstorm, right? It's all these chemical chaoses that your substances have caused, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever. They hijack your neurotransmitters. When you ingest substances, it just completely deregulates what's the natural order of what's going on in your brain. So key players here, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. And recovery is really your brain working overtime to restore that balance. You'll hear me say this a million times. Your brain is always seeking balance. And if you want to understand a little bit more about this process, this is what I call the A-B process of alcohol. I'll link in the show notes a video that I've made breaking all of this down, as well as where anxiety comes into play. You can also go into my Instagram, and it's right there in my link tree. But again, knowledge is power. So your brain is rebalancing. All these neurotransmitters are all over the place. And it's a slow process. There's ups and downs. It can be frustrating as the dickens, but it's all really normal. So I want to talk about how this can contribute to relapse, because pause can feel so challenging and it can lead to relapse if you're not prepared. And again, this is why I say knowledge is power, because when you go through post-acute withdrawal, there's a lot of other factors here. You're going to have cravings, right? Because you have lower than normal dopamine levels. I'll talk more about this. But you go through emotional instability, mood swings, anxiety, depression, and you feel like you're failing at the whole thing. So without understanding that there are parts of pause that can come and go, I think it's easy to think like, oh, maybe I'll just go back to alcohol because alcohol made things so much easier. Oftentimes people will tell me like, it's been X amount of weeks or months and I don't feel better. Like I might as well just go back to drinking. And trust me, I get that. I totally get it. There's also like basic stress sensitivity. Everyday stressors can feel like super overwhelming when your brain's stress response is still healing. Because remember, you numbed it out through all the big feels or even the everyday feels. The everyday shit you numbed out. So now you've got to face it sober. And that's kind of why I say you're raw dogging it. But my husband hates when I say that. And then also pause can contribute to being just completely impatient with the overall process. Like, come on, you're just so frustrated you had to give up alcohol in the first place. And recovery takes time. So when people don't feel better quickly, they get really discouraged and they think, what's the freaking point? And it's kind of like that analogy where if you only go through the beginning phases and you only go through the parts of the hard post-acute withdrawal and you never get to the easy parts, of course you can think, what's the point? Why would I even do this? It's like climbing uphill over and over and over again. You never get to the downhill part. Don't invite me hiking. I'm not a fan of hiking, but there's a really good analogy here. Like hiking overall would suck if there was never a gorgeous view at the end, if there was never a downhill part, if there was never like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. For me, like that place you take a selfie in front of everyone, like, look at me in my Lululemon, I went hiking. Hashtag the great outdoors, whatever. I'm just kidding. Don't invite me hiking. But basically, if you continue on in the post-acute withdrawal phases, and then you go back to drinking because it sucks ass, then you're just climbing uphill over and over again. So no wonder your vision of sobriety is like, no, all of that sucks. And I talked about this at length on social media one time about the hard parts, about how important it is to understand that there's going to be some really sucky parts. and that post-acute withdrawal can last a really long time. And I got this comment from this guy saying, "Why are you fear-mongering everyone? That's all you're doing." Like, he wanted me to post about how amazing recovery was. And it is amazing. It's the coolest, most amazing thing I've ever done in my life. But also, there's an and here. I guess it's not but, it's and. It's also hard, and people need to understand this. I am not fear-mongering you. I want you to be empowered with knowledge. And do you really wanna have alcohol, like, have you by the balls for the rest of your life? I mean, to have to drink alcohol to survive? Do you wanna be dependent on something? Or do you wanna be free? So, if you can understand what your brain and body are going through, understand that it's the brain rebalancing. It's a natural part of the process, and it takes time. And then you'll know, like, dude, I'm not gonna be left out of the miracle of recovery. Sometimes in recovery circles, you'll hear like someone say, "I'm just gonna sit in my shitty diaper." I even say that. I mean, I'm just gonna sit in it. And that's where community comes in. You're gonna laugh with your community, your sober community, and you're gonna say, "This part is hard. I feel like bleh," or "I'm teary-eyed," or "I'm like short fused. I'm snapping at my family. I'm wondering when it's gonna get better." Right? This is where community comes in hardcore, calling someone who's sober, working with a coach, getting in some kind of, community setting. So where you can bounce all this off of people. And if you have to just sit in your shitty diaper and feel it all and vent it all, that's okay. But knowing these challenges, it helps you prepare, right? Because the more you understand, the more you can write out the tough days without feeling completely defeated. So let's talk about the science of what's going on with the prolonged brain rebalancing or the post-acute withdrawal. Um, the process, understanding the process can help you kind of see that what you're experiencing isn't failure, like I talked about. It's your brain doing the hard, necessary work of healing. So when you drink or you consume substances over time, your brain learns to adapt in a way that is fundamentally changing how it works. Like it rewires, right? That's why addiction is often described as a brain disorder. It's not about willpower. It's about chemistry. So what's going on? So there's dopamine hijacking. Substances like alcohol and drugs, they flood your brain with dopamine, that feel-good neurotransmitter. So normally dopamine's released in small bursts when you eat a piece of chocolate or have sex or, small bursts of dopamine during any fun activities. But when you drink, it hijacks that system. So you get a huge spike in dopamine. You feel really euphoric. Over time, what happens is your brain reduces its natural dopamine production because it's overwhelmed by all those artificial spikes. Remember at first I said when you stop drinking, you have low dopamine levels until they regulate? This is why, because it was overwhelmed. And so it kind of pulls back and says, okay, well, I don't need to produce dopamine. So it takes time. So what does this look like? Anhedonia. It's the inability to feel pleasure during otherwise fun times. And this does return, of course, over time. Your brain regulates and little things just light you up, like a baby's laughter or eating an ice cream cone or like a sunset or, those cheesy little things that used to make us super happy. That will return again. But anhedonia is like the absence of pleasure, and you go through a period of that. That shit is real. You will go through kind of a blah period. And then you think, oh my gosh, everything that I thought was so fun is not fun and blah, blah, blah. Talk to your coach. Call me. So the other things going on, neurotransmitter disruption, big time. And that's where GABA and glutamate play in. Alcohol affects GABA, and GABA is the neurotransmitter that helps regulate relaxation and excitement. GABA and glutamate in combined. Alcohol boosts up your GABA levels, which is the calming neurotransmitter, and it suppresses glutamate, which is the stimulating neurotransmitter. So yeah, you feel relaxed and buzzed and less inhibited when you first consume it. Again, I go into all of this in that video that I'll link in the bio. With use over time of booze, you drink and drink, you got your tolerance level, your brain is compensating. So it reduces GABA and increases glutamate. So you get heightened anxiety, hangxiety. You get like overexcited when you stop drinking. And that contributes to that feeling of like heart racing, jittery, just, oh, it's the freaking worst. Another thing that's going on is your hormones are all imbalanced because alcohol affects your body's ability to regulate your stress hormone. So cortisol, adrenaline. Like when you're in active addiction, your brain becomes dependent on that alcohol to handle all your stress. So you get super anxious and overwhelmed without it. And like I talked about, you go through the dopamine deficiency. Without those artificial spikes from dopamine, your brain has a hard time producing and regulating dopamine naturally. That's where you get the anhedonia, low energy, lack of motivation, inability to feel pleasure. Um, the GABA and the glutamate, as they rebalance, they don't snap back overnight. Early in recovery, you can feel that jittery, anxious feeling for a while. You can have trouble sleeping. You can feel on edge because your brain is still rebalancing and recalibrating. And it's calming and stimulating the nervous systems all in one. And that's why you have that heightened sensitivity to stress. Like even in early sobriety, like small things can feel really overwhelming. And that's the post-acute withdrawal phase. You can also go through like a fog, like a cognitive fog, because the frontal lobe, the part of your brain that is responsible for decision making and like planning, focus, um, it functions below its best capacity in early recovery. And that's a nice way of saying like your frontal lobe is having a hard time. It's subpar at best. So people in PAWS feel like forgetful. You feel foggy. You have trouble concentrating because the brain is literally rewiring these connections so you can operate without relying on substances. I remember at about 3 months sober, I was watching TV with my husband and I looked over at him and I said, I forgot how to be a nurse. And he was like, what? I was like, yeah, I forgot. I also forgot how to drive. Like, driving made me really, really anxious, and I feel like I forgot the rules of the road. I was that foggy in the beginning. And I thought, oh my God, am I always going to be like this? But no, it got better. But I will never forget that feeling of like telling my husband I forgot how to be a nurse. Crazy. It felt terrible. And then there's mood swings. And, while you're going through emotional regulation, because when you disrupt dopamine, serotonin, GABA, all those neurotransmitters, your emotions can feel like they're all over the freaking place. And you can experience those mood swings and the irritability, the feelings of despair and being like, oh my gosh, this came out of nowhere. It's a natural part of your brain working to rebuild its systems, its natural systems for emotional regulation. Okay, so why the hell does it last so long? And remember, I said it can last 6 months to 2 years. Well, 6 months isn't a hard start. It's not like at 6 months you're going immediately in. And 2 years is not a hard number either. It's different for everyone. It really depends on a lot of various factors. But the reason why it takes so long is because there's that prolonged nature of your brain rebalancing. Because it's complex, there's a complexity in rebuilding all those neurotransmitters and all those neural pathways. And this is why. A big reason is neuroplasticity. Your brain's amazing. It's incredibly adaptable. Thank God. I mean, I like to say your brain is really smart. But rewiring takes time. I know that sucks. In AA, they say time takes time, and I want to punch people in the face. But neuroplasticity is the key here. It's your brain's ability to form new connections and heal. But it doesn't happen overnight. I know that sucks, but every day you stay sober, your brain is building those new, healthier neural pathways. I remember at about close to 1 year sober, I was sitting in a Starbucks with my AA sponsor, and it got quiet for a second, just long enough for me to blurt out, I'm so fucking bored I can die. because I was feeling legitimately that bored. And she just looked at me like, oh my God, you've embarrassed me yet again. And we're not in a church basement. We are at Starbucks. But I was literally feeling like, if this is my new life, feeling blah and meh and having to go to meetings all the time, I'm so bored I could die. And she laughed because she knew it would get better. But I remember that like it was yesterday, because that feeling was like, I was so frustrated. And again, that also goes into, we're used to, big highs and lows when we're drinking, and recovery can be kind of meh in the beginning. And so that's a whole nother podcast episode. But we're repairing our reward system also. Because after we drink for a long time or prolonged substance use of any kind, your brain's reward system is like totally desensitized. So it can take months of sobriety for your brain to relearn how to release dopamine naturally and make like everyday activities feel good again. Remember, I said, you know, for you to enjoy a sunset or a baby laughing, it takes time for your brain to relearn and really get a grasp on, the right amount and how to get that dopamine released naturally so that you can feel joy again. Your hormones have to regulate, because the stress response system, which became over-reliant on booze and substances, that also needs time to regulate your nervous system. And this can take a little while and lead to like long-time feelings of anxiety or fatigue. And you can be super irritable during post-acute withdrawal. Dude, I know I was. I was so bored I could die and told everyone at Starbucks. So, how do you support yourself during this time? Or how does your coach support you, your friend, your loved one, because it's also helpful to tell your family, like, hey, dude, this part could come, right? You can't rush the process. So you just have to support your brain while you're healing. And I'm going to breeze through this part because, again, I try not to talk about anything on this podcast that you can Google, but I want you to hear me on this. How are you going to support your brain? Nutrition is a big one. Body movement, sleep hygiene, and like really dropping in to meditation or yoga. So I'm going to go into all of those. You're going to eat a balanced diet. You're going to try to keep it rich in whole, real food, like particularly those that boost like brain health. Think like omega-3 fatty acids, salmon, walnuts. Think about antioxidants. Get your berries in, your leafy greens. Lean toward more complex carbs, like quinoa or sweet potatoes. Like you want to keep your blood sugar stabilized, and that'll help you stabilize your mood as well. Eat lots of protein and try to avoid processed foods and sugar. Although I'm going to caveat that by saying you do whatever you got to do to stay sober in the beginning. Like in the beginning, you are in survival mode. I tell my clients, you have one freaking job, and that is to not drink. So if you have to eat 2 bags of jelly beans and live on loaves of bread, do it. I don't care. It's harm reduction. You're not drinking right now. You can always perfect your diet later, and we'll have whole episodes on supportive diets, but that comes later. This piece on nutrition I'm only going into because right after you've gone through detox, you're massively depleted. So if you can, and you have the emotional bandwidth and the patience and you're not ready to stab a bitch, then yes, try to eat as good as possible. This really, really is helpful. And move your body. I really don't like the word exercise because that implies that you have to go out and go for a big ass run and the, and the H word, hike, or that you have to do a triathlon, and that's not what you have to do. You just need to move your body. You need purposeful movement. Go for a walk, listen to a podcast, listen to me barking in your ear. This is going to increase your dopamine and your serotonin levels naturally, helps lower that stress response. Even a 20-minute walk can help you regulate your mood. I mean, I'm so passionate about this part that I contributed to the book Sobriety for Dummies, all about movement, how it does help. But again, early recovery, you have one job, which is to stay sober. So do not push yourself into some big, crazy exercise routine if you don't want to. If that's not your jam, don't do it. Like, I'm all for those people who marathon themselves to recovery, but that was never me. I was like, I'm lucky to go for a walk. I took lots and lots and lots of walks around our local lake. I walked laps and laps and laps with my first sponsor and then a coach and then my sober besties. I mean, walking, purposeful movement, get lots of sleep, create a bedtime routine. You're in sobriety, you're naturally going to become one of those people who starts to go to bed early and get up early. So I'm not going to go into all that, and then of course the experts will all say to limit caffeine, but I'm going like primal here. You do what you got to do to stay sober in the beginning. You can worry about limiting your caffeine intake later. Of course, mindfulness always helps. If you can do a little meditation or yoga or deep breathing, that always helps. But that might come with time with some people. And I'm going to have some episodes further on these practices as well. But one of your biggest lifesavers here is going to also be social connection, is going to be recovery communities, sober communities, relationships with other people. It's going to save your ass. Community engagement. It actually releases oxytocin, like a feel-good hormone that counteracts a lot of those emotional areas of lows in PAWS. So those are some things you can do to kind of support yourself while your brain is rebalancing. And I'm telling you all this because I really feel like understanding it matters. When we reframe this struggle, when we understand what we're going through, we know it's part of a scientific process. We know our brain is rewiring itself. We stop blaming ourselves. We stop blaming ourselves for the bad days. We realize, like, it's not weakness, it's just biology. It's par for the course. And it helps also to reduce the shame around it. A lot of people feel pressure to talk about sober life as the best life. They feel so amazing, everything's awesome. And it is. But it's not awesome all the time. And it's okay to feel like shit sometimes. So you shouldn't feel ashamed of being irritable or foggy or low. It doesn't mean you're failing at recovery. It just means your brain is doing its job. And every day you stay sober, you're doing what you need to do to heal. So when you know this stuff, it empowers your choices. And I know that sounds cheesy, but when you arm yourself with knowledge, like I read every book I could, I listened to every podcast, I took classes, it really helped me stay the course in recovery, even when it was hard. Because I started to be able to choose things that supported brain healing over time, and I could see that paying off. Because it's not easy. But the fact that our brains can even rebalance, recalibrate, the concept of neuroplasticity, it's just a testament to your brain's resilience and your own commitment to healing. Because one thing I like to say is, like, remember, every freaking tough day is proof of how badass your brain is. It's like working to restore itself. So I also want to talk about the pink cloud, because I'm getting ready to close it out here, and I hate ending on a rotten note. Everything's awful. You're going to die. Okay, bye. Catch you on the next episode. Just kidding. So a lot of people have a pink cloud in recovery, and this is the flip side, right? So what is that pink cloud? Well, it's like a feeling of euphoria, and it can be a euphoric phase. And it often happens in early recovery, but it can come at any time. And this pink cloud is like, you feel hopeful, you're excited, hashtag sobriety rocks, hashtag sober life is the best life. Like, you got this whole sobriety thing, got it figured out. Thank God for pink clouds, because going through those pink cloud phases, it's like a sneak peek of how amazing your life is going to be on the other side. And you need those pink clouds every once in a while to pull you out of the gutter. And the pink cloud happens because basically your brain's starting to heal. And there's this relief of no longer being trapped in addiction. And that can feel mother effing exhilarating. So, some people have a pink cloud for like weeks, others for months. But it's not permanent, just like post-acute withdrawal is not permanent. And that's okay. Because it goes back to that concept of recovery not being linear. You can go in and out of both post-acute withdrawal and the pink cloud. You might feel like super amazing for a stretch, like energized, motivated, and like, I'm unstoppable. And then you hit a period where like, PAWS is back. And then you can go back and forth if that's not enough fuckery. So how do we navigate all those fluctuations? Again, I'm going to say this, educate yourself. Knowledge is power. Even just listening to this podcast, I hope you turn it off and you go, okay, all right, I got this. Like, she just explained some things. I'm not cray-cray. I know the power of knowledge. I've armed myself. It's all temporary. It's part of the healing process. I can stay grounded. And I would say, so number one, educate yourself. Number two, give this a name. Call it what it is. Be like, okay, I know this is part of post-acute withdrawal, or I'm on my pink cloud phase. Like, keep a journal, write it down, notice the patterns. Maybe you'll even notice certain triggers or stressors that can make the pause worse. So identifying this. And then pamper yourself, take care of yourself, mother yourself, prioritize yourself, because and maybe even prepare those around you that you're going to go through these phases. Your brain needs fuel to heal. You're going to need good nutrition. You're going to need sleep. You're going to need some water. You're going to need healthy food around you. So prepare your family and those around you to support you during this time. Sometimes, you got to make yourself number one priority during this phase. And then you're going to build connection, and this is going to save your ass. And this is a huge reason why I'm building a group coaching container. Because isolation can make PAWS so much worse. Because again, you feel like you're the only one, you're going through this, you're failing, something's not right. So I want you to surround yourself with people who understand what you're going through. And this could be a recovery group, a group coaching container, friends, an AA meeting, whatever resonates for you. But build your connection here and celebrate like the small wins, the small progress. Because even on the hard days, like, take a minute to reflect, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. Every sober day is a win, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if you are 86 from a Starbucks because you screamed out loud. So remember that pink cloud's just giving you a glimpse of what's possible. And I mean a glimpse, okay? To the haters out there, I am a recovery cheerleader. I am not a fearmonger, but I also keep it real. So this is all super important to understand. So thanks for bearing with me through all this information. Reach out if you have questions. Again, check out that video. I put together lots of videos because I think it's all so important, and yet I know it can be daunting going through a lot of material. So I love you. Catch you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. You can find me on my website at katevitella.com. You can also connect with me on Instagram at katevitella. I would love to hear from you. Any feedback or questions, shoot me a note. So until next time, peace within and bullshit out.